Welcome to PropTech Pulse, the podcast that takes the pulse of prop technology in multifamily. I'm your host, Shelley Robinson, and each week we'll be diving deep into innovations, challenges, and the future of work in property technology and multifamily. From AI-driven property management to blockchain and real estate, we're here to explore how technology is reshaping the way we live, work, and invest in multifamily communities. Whether you're a property manager, a tech entrepreneur, an executive, or even simply curious about the future of living spaces, PropTech Pulse is your weekly dose of insights and inspiration. So let's sync our rhythms and get on with the show. It's time to take the pulse. Welcome to PropTech Pulse. Kevin, thank you so much for joining the conversation today. I'm so glad to have you.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be here.
Well, why don't we this is going to be a prop tech adjacent conversation today, which I think is important as well, because it feeds into a lot of our listeners are prop tech founders and always looking at kind of what's next. And I think multifamily utilities is actually a really important conversation, both for residents and for property owners and prop tech founders. So I think we got a lot to unpack here today. To kick us off, why don't you tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about you and what you've been building?
Thank you, Shelley. Yeah. So my career in the telecommunications industry started when, in the spirit of honesty, when my college girlfriend got pregnant and I needed a job, right? So I started selling cable TV door to door, and I enjoyed the product. And so I enjoyed the company I was with at that time. It was Comcast. And so I stayed with Comcast, and I kept being successful at whatever job that they gave me. And through several moves, I worked my way around the eastern half of the United States, and I ended up leaving there when they got really, really big. You know, the part I loved was the entrepreneurship, the small company going after it. And then at a certain point, they got big and very successful. I mean, I have no qualms about that. That's great for them and many people that were there. It just didn't seem like a fit for me anymore. So I was the area vice president of operations on the west side of Detroit. I oversaw like 1,200 employees and some customers, and it just came to a point where I just wasn't happy anymore. I made good money, I was doing well, but I wasn't happy. So I wanted that challenge again, that challenge of being an entrepreneur and starting something smaller and then growing. And so I started the parent company of Multifamily Utility Solutions is Telecom Marketing Strategies. And at that point, we did some consulting and we tried to help. At that point, they were called cable companies. Now they call themselves telecommunications companies, to line up third-party vendors. And that evolved into us sitting at the table and representing those companies in negotiating access rights for multifamily properties.
Yeah.
And then and then that ended because they took that work in-house. So we were a third-party vendor, and they said, hey, we're going to do this all with employees. So here we are sitting at the table negotiating with the apartment owner, and our client says, well, you're no longer with us. So we just flipped over to the other side. And for the last 12, 13 years, we've been representing multifamily property owners and their property management companies as they negotiate the access rights for having broadband services on their property. Because a lot of people don't realize that. That's the thing, is a city might grant you a right of easement, but that's only for the public easements. So in order to get on the private property, they have to have a contract with either the single homeowner. If I'm a homeowner, I can give them permission to be there. But if I'm the apartment owner, or we also work with mobile home communities or homeowners associations, you become the gatekeeper. You, as the organization, have to give permission for them to be on your property. And so that's where we started going in. It was a lot of education with a lot of property owners that didn't realize that they had that right to, and the way they end up making money because of those contracts with a well-negotiated agreement they can add. And, most of our clients now, and that's how Multifamily Utility Solutions came in, and they said, okay, you're doing a great job with broadband. What else can you do? And so we picked up a partner that can do electric. We picked up a partner that can do solar. We can pick up a partner who can do water conservation. We picked up all these utility partners. And the great thing is that broadband is necessary for a lot of these PropTech applications and solutions to function.
100%.
So like you said, adjacent, that's how we are affiliated and involved, but not a PropTech necessarily company ourselves.
Yeah. Really, we can't innovate at these large properties, especially ones that need repositioning, unless they have up-to-date support of the technology that they're trying to deploy. And that goes all the way down to like, you have a parking garage that needs door sensors that work for a unified controlled access system. So that is right on the money. Do you do mostly work with lease ups, or do you do a lot of repositioning work, or kind of an even mix of both? Or what's your ideal client look like?
Our ideal client, well, we can work with anybody, right? We can work with people who are trying to do added value. They just bought a property. They're trying to reposition it and add value and increase that. And then they're probably going to sell in a few years. A lot of times they're using syndicated money, and they have people that they have to pay back in a certain period. So their business plan looks very different than the people who are out there who are now trying to buy bigger and bigger properties and create generational wealth, right? And that's one of the keys when we first started talking about PropTech and what's the solution, what's the plan for PropTech. Quite frankly, it depends on what the business plan is, right? So if you're an added value person that's going to be out in 3 to 5 years, you're not going to want to spend the same amount of capital that maybe has a longer return on that investment as you are if you're creating generational wealth. So that's one of the first things we do when we sit down with a new client is we find out, tell me about your portfolio, tell me about your business plan, because we don't want to be telling them and advising them on generational wealth plan if they're looking to get out in 3 to 5 years. Yeah,
if they're flipping it, right? If they're syndicated and really a value add flip at the right market conditions to sell. So that's actually really important for PropTech founders that listen to this call as well, because many times property technology founders get into multifamily and don't really understand the nuances of ownership. REITs are even different than a value add syndication or a family like a Prometheus Real Estate Group here in the Bay Area. They've got properties that they built in like 1965 that they still own in the family, and they've never sold them. So very different hold philosophies when you're going in to sell, and different techniques in that sales process. So that's
well, Shelley, like you mentioned too, though, there's other variables, not just, what their investment plan is, but is it a Class A property or is it a mobile home community, right? Those are very different. And the PropTech needs at each of them is very different. So we have to understand that going in as we're advising them on broadband. You may need a more robust broadband solution in a Class A property, apartment property, than you would in a rural mobile home community.
Totally.
So those things all factor in. And so we like to ask questions and listen before we do anything else with new clients.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. A lot of people in sales go in thinking they know what their customers want rather than listen. And my business coach always, do 80% listening and 20% talking. Super important. When you listen, you hear a lot more, and you can customize your offerings and your pitch. Are there trends in utilities right now? And utilities is more than just water, sewer, gas. It's like you're saying, it's broadband, it's connectivity. What are kind of the trends you're seeing that are important across these various verticals and sectors right now that you serve?
Well, the broadband space is getting more and more competitive, right? You used to have your traditional cable company, and then you had your phone company. And the phone company lagged behind in technology when they had just their DSL and their copper. Now they're deploying fiber. You've got third-party, managed Wi-Fi systems who can lease fiber and come in and manage a specific property. So there's more people. Yeah. So our process in the last 5 years, one thing that's changed for us is our process is longer. We do a free assessment because we have to determine who's available for that particular property. And what we're finding is there's more and more options available. So that means that we have to talk to more and more people to see what their solution they would propose. So that's one thing that's definitely changed in the last 5 to 10 years. It's just that there's more providers and speeds have increased, right? There's fiber technologies, the upload and the download speeds are all increasing and things like that. And as we mentioned, I think earlier before we went on the recording, a lot of that had to do with COVID, right? The needs became greater. And so you always, and that's my least favorite question is what's going to happen in the future? Well, we don't know because we didn't know COVID was going to happen. And out of that, some bad things happened, but some good things happened too. The advancement of technology out of the need for it happened. And so we don't know what's going to happen along, those same lines in the next 5 to 10 years. Could be something we don't even see happening right now that could accelerate technology, create products that are maybe just on the drawing board right now, but will be commonplace after that.
It's so true. And I think it goes back to you saying too, even like the way that the ownership philosophy and the business plan actually stalls or drives innovation as well. Some of the most innovative companies I know right now are wholly owned family office companies in the industry. And I think that goes back even to utilities as well. Are you seeing trends even amongst the differences of product groups or hold strategies of what they're doing with utilities right now? Anything that is of note there?
There's new services, new products that are associated with utilities, right? Solar. What's the plan for solar?
Yeah.
We don't know, and it varies by state, and it varies by laws that are enacted, and the solar outlook is different now than it was 2 years ago, right? So that's another one. Because of the capital investment, that's typically best for larger apartment communities in states or markets where the utility provider, the electric provider might buy back excess and where you're going to put it. You want a newer roof. You don't want to put that over an older roof. And you want it if you have carports or parking structures that have angled roofs, then that makes it even better. So there's just so many questions that we have to ask to determine whether or not, what's the right solution. I mean, we always talk about broadband because that's available everywhere. But then when you get to other things like electricity, well, we can only get competitive bids in deregulated markets, right? We've got to
Texas, right? Texas is deregulated.
One of them. There's a lot up in the Ohio, Illinois, Pennsylvania. I mean, there's some up there. So but even within Texas, there's certain cities that are not deregulated because they have municipal electric systems. So we have to really dig into that. And if somebody's telling me that they have a property in South Carolina, or Tennessee, I'm certainly not going to mention electric as an option because they're in states with regulated electric rates, and there's no opportunity for them to do anything greater.
Makes sense. You really have to customize a plan based on business plan, hold strategy, class, regulatory environment, and then what opportunities exist in that entire. And
size of the property is another one of them. We've got another partner that helps generate revenue, and they help do cellular equipment leases on top of roofs.
Yeah, I used to do those in some of my high rises in Cleveland.
But those have to be 4 stories at a minimum and flat roof. If they don't meet those criteria, there's no point in even talking about that. So those are some of the questions we ask when we're finding out about if you're a new client. I'm going to sit down with you, Shelley. Tell me about your strategy. Tell me about your portfolio. Tell me about, what type of buildings you have and things like that. And then we'll come back with an assessment to say, here's where we think the opportunities are for you to either experience savings or incremental revenue.
That's actually really important. And right now, everyone I talk to, my clients, owners, operators, they're all looking for opportunities and more NOI. Cost environment has gone up. A lot of markets, the rent has stagnated, at least temporarily. So, reaching out to someone like you would be of value so they can discover what areas of opportunity they potentially have to have more squeeze out of the juice.
Right. I mean, we're not equivalent to $100 increase in rent, right? But when I worked at Comcast, I remember sitting in a budget meeting with our CFO, and he told me once, he said, look, $1 million is $1 million $1 bills. So if you take care of the ones and start picking them up and adding them up, it will accumulate. And that's what we do with utilities. While my section of the utilities may only be, an added value of $20 a year, I've got 4 other business partners that can give you 20 more. You've now got 100, and depending on what the cap rate is, that can be some real asset value improvement.
It really is. And everybody out there is looking for that value improvement, regardless of their hold strategy. It's whether it's cash flow this year or long-term value. I think that fits both. Any trends in retrofitting right now on properties? I know a couple value add clients of mine that's all they do. The retrofit conversation sometimes can get dicey. So what's your perspective on the retrofit environment right now with utilities and opportunities?
Yeah, it can, because like we mentioned, that fiber is being deployed in markets. But if you've got an existing building that's already got a cable provider in there and you're already providing, pretty good services, do you really want to go through the disruption to put fiber into buildings? You certainly probably don't want it on conduit wrapped around your building, so those are all things that we try and make sure when people make the decision that they're aware of all those things. Yes, I want fiber. Well, by saying that, you're agreeing to, every unit's going to have to be wired in some cases. They're going to have to bring fiber in, and they may have to put conduit on the outside and things like that. Our job is to educate our clients and help them make the best decision based on as many facts as we can provide at that location. And that's why PropTech is important. We need to know, are there certain things that you're trying to do? Are you trying to become a smart community? This is more important a lot of times with new build, right?
Yeah.
With new construction, we need a lot more details. What's it look like? Because in those cases, the amount of broadband service they need to support those things is greater.
Well, I even think about, you've got a property initiative of rolling out virtual tours, and virtual tours require cell phone service to work throughout the tour and different things. And you could have a bunch of dead zones at an older property. And so it does start to go into the opportunity cost modernization. At what point do you have to modernize to get the PropTech to work in many of these cases? So it's important to use someone like you as you have these plans in place with your marketing team and your technology team at your property management companies to make sure everything would work in the first place and what it would cost to make it work if you have to retrofit.
I like to look at us as one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, it's an important piece, which I think sometimes people come into the industry from outside and don't understand the nuances of these older buildings many times either. I ran a portfolio in Cleveland that was made out of cement block, and you couldn't get anything to work in it unless you changed everything about how that access worked to modernize it over time.
Could you imagine trying to put fiber into one of those buildings?
I can't even imagine.
You're either punching through big cement, or trying to run conduit all over, or drop down through closets, or
even trying to install electronic locks on a building like that is going to be you're going to have disparate systems to even make the controlled access for general work differently than the door-to-door access. It would be a giant investment. Important topic. Okay. Anything overhyped or underhyped right now in multifamily around utilities and property technology, or vice versa?
Well, I'll tell you, about 2 years ago, maybe even a year ago, I was pretty bullish on these electric car chargers that could be placed in the parking lots, especially of Class A properties. And it was actually a way that the owner could spend the capital but they could actually charge for the electric use. So it was a way long-term to make more revenue. And it made it so that if you had an electric vehicle that, you wanted a property, if I'm looking at two properties and one's got this and one doesn't, I'm probably more likely to go and go into the property that has it. So, but based on I don't know how to put this, but based on some political changes and some viewpoints and the fact that electric car sales seem to be declining and not as appealing as they were a couple years ago. Now, I expect that to swing back. Everything seems to swing back and forth. And I think there will be a time that does make sense. But, that's why you got to be careful not to jump the gun on all this stuff too, right? You can't do all things. You have to make sure it fits in your business plan. And if that was something that I would have recommended to somebody who was trying to get out in 3 to 5 years, a year or two ago, now they would have regretted it, right? Because they could have taken that capital and invested it in other things. Because if you're going through and you're trying to, it comes down to, here's a list of all the things I could do. Now, which things can I afford to do? And what's the best return on those investments? And I really thought that was going to be something for Class A properties, but it's slowed at this time.
That makes sense too. And it goes back to even partnering with your marketing team and your demographics of your renters, because there's still some hot areas around electric vehicles. Like where I live is definitely still very hot of an amenity to have at your property is to have adequate charging. But I do think there's other areas where it's not getting any deployment or a need for any deployment, regardless if there's incentives or not. And I do agree it will continue to swing back and forth. Kind of the beauty of a constitutional republic and yet a challenge of a constitutional republic is things will always change.
Yep.
But that's really important that you shared that, and a really good note to providers of housing to kind of really think through those investments and work with someone like you on that as well.
Well, especially on things that are newer, right? I mean, everything has a life cycle. And, I'm reading a book now that talks about, when things come to market, and it could be anything from disposable razors. How long did it take them to come to, now they're commonplace. When I talk to my son, about, in our car, we used to have an 8-track player. He looks at me like, what the heck are you talking about?
What's that?
He barely remembers CDs, right? He's in college right now. So
my daughter's same. Yeah.
It's
totally.
like, wait, what? What? Explain to me what? And you couldn't just pick your exact song. So, technology takes some time and you want to be, I don't know. I've always thought you want to be a fast follower, but you got to be very careful if you're being a pioneer or a leader.
Yep. Especially when it comes to housing stickiness. On the same note, I was watching a video of families that are putting landlines back into their homes so that their kids aren't given smart devices too young. Like, this is a fascinating trend. Is our landlines going to make a comeback because people want less technology in their life, right? There could be even a trend that comes up from an overabundance of technology into a place looking for, a little less.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, too much of anything can be too much, and we got to, find ways to kind of monitor that.
Yeah. Well, this has been a really great conversation today, Kevin, and I'm so glad people can see your website and your phone number right here as well, but I'll make sure I put it in the link of the episode when the episode goes live. Any last thoughts today before we end the conversation?
I think that we've just got to keep in mind that, one size doesn't fit all in this, right? I mean, and technology goes with the population as it ages, right? So what is available in senior living today is going to look more in 20 years is going to look more like what's available in A and B class properties today as those people evolve and get there. So if you're a senior living community, you don't have to provide the same amenities, I believe, that an A class property does today. But over time, you should look at that and say, we need to prepare for that, but we need to prepare for that in 20 years or so and build it into maybe a long-term budget.
Love it. That's great advice. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And look forward to talking to you some more in the future, I'm quite sure.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Shelley.
And that wraps up another episode of PropTech Pulse. I hope this conversation has given you valuable insights and perhaps even sparked some ideas for your own PropTech journey. Remember, the future of multifamily is being written right now with every technological advance and innovative solution. So stay curious, stay connected, and keep your finger on the pulse of PropTech. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to PropTech Pulse on your favorite podcast platform and share this along with your colleagues. You can also find us on social media for bite-sized insights and updates. I'm Shelley Robinson, and until next time, let's keep innovating, disrupting, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in PropTech and multifamily. Let's build it together.